A millionaire sees his 5-year-old daughter cleaning tables at his own wedding, and in that single moment, his entire world falls apart. The guests are laughing, cameras are flashing, until the little girl looks up at him and whispers words that stop his heart. "Mummy says you're my daddy." He thought he'd left his past behind. The small-town waitress, the struggle, the mistakes. But now, the truth he buried is standing right in front of him, holding a tray too heavy for her tiny hands. His perfect wedding becomes a public disaster, and the woman he once loved refuses his help, saying, "You can't buy your way into her heart." Now, stripped of fame and fortune, he must face the one thing money can't fix: redemption. But as secrets unravel and love collides with pride, can a man who built an empire learn to rebuild the family he destroyed? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The late afternoon sun painted the California hills in shades of gold, casting a warm glow over the exclusive vineyard estate. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the perfect sky, offering guests a breathtaking panoramic view of the rolling landscape, dotted with neat rows of grapevines. The scene looked like something from a magazine cover, which was exactly what Candace Monroe had planned. Nathan Cole stood at the altar, his tailored tuxedo highlighting his athletic frame. At 42, he cut an impressive figure, success and discipline evident in his bearing. He reached up to adjust his silk tie for the 3rd time in 5 minutes, his fingers brushing against the small microphone clipped to his lapel. "The stream numbers are incredible, sir," Trevor Lang whispered, glancing up from his tablet. "We're trending in 6 countries. The personal assistant's eyes sparkled with professional pride. The luxury sponsors are thrilled with the engagement metrics. Nathan nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. The venue buzzed with activity as 200 carefully selected guests found their seats. Camera crews positioned themselves strategically, capturing every angle of what promised to be the social media event of the season. His bride-to-be, Candace Monroe, waited just out of sight. At 29, she had built an empire around her Perfect Life blog, turning carefully curated moments into sponsored content that reached millions. Their relationship had followed the same pattern, documented, optimized, and monetized for their combined followers. The string quartet began to play, and Nathan's chest tightened. He watched the wedding planner direct traffic with military precision, everything moving according to schedule. The flowers were perfect, white roses and orchids cascading from crystal vases. The champagne towers caught the light just so. Even the weather had cooperated, providing the exact golden hour lighting Candace had requested. "Remember to smile," Trevor murmured, tapping his own cheek. "The close-up camera is on your 3 o'clock. Nathan manufactured the expression expected of him, the same one he'd perfected for magazine covers and television interviews. It was the look of a man who had everything, the self-made millionaire who'd climbed from nothing to something, the orphan who'd built an empire through sheer determination and genius. The priest stepped forward, a distinguished man with silver hair who had officiated at countless high society weddings. He opened his leather-bound book with practiced grace, his voice carrying clearly through the state-of-the-art sound system. "Love," the priest began. "True love is patient and kind. It endures all things, believes all things, hopes all things." Something inside Nathan's chest shifted uncomfortably. The words should have filled him with joy, but instead they left an empty echo. He found himself thinking of coding late into the night in his first apartment, eating ramen noodles and dreaming of changing the world. When had success become more about appearances than substance? The music swelled, signaling Candace's entrance. Nathan turned, playing his part perfectly. She was stunning in a designer gown that had been kept secret from social media specifically for this moment. Her dark hair fell in elegant waves, her makeup flawless. She moved with practiced grace, each step timed to the photographer's rhythm. Camera flashes sparkled like stars. The live stream count ticked higher. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned, a perfect production of a perfect day. Then movement caught Nathan's eye, something out of place in this carefully choreographed scene. Near the buffet tables, where the reception would later be held, a small figure moved between the settings. A little girl in a waitress apron, probably no more than 12 years old, quietly wiped down tables with careful concentration. Nathan's carefully maintained smile faltered. Something about her, the serious set of her mouth, the determined focus in her eyes, struck him like a physical blow. She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear with a familiar gesture that made his throat close up. "Sir," Trevor whispered, noting his employer's distraction. "The vows are about to start." But Nathan couldn't look away from the girl. In her features he saw echoes of another face, one he'd tried so hard to forget. A face from 20 years ago, when he was nobody, when his dreams were just beginning to take shape, when love had been simple and real and uncomplicated by success. The priest's voice continued, but the words seemed to come from far away. The girl moved methodically from table to table, unaware of the chaos she'd created in Nathan's mind. Her presence was like a crack in the perfect veneer of the day, letting in something raw and real and uncomfortable. "Nathan." Candace's voice, sharp despite her camera-ready smile, pulled at his attention. But his eyes kept drifting back to the girl, watching her quiet dedication to a simple task, while all around her, a production of epic proportions unfolded. The contrast was stark, between the genuine focus of the young worker and the carefully constructed reality of the wedding, between true purpose and carefully crafted appearance, between what he had become and what he had once been. The girl looked up suddenly, as if sensing his gaze. Their eyes met across the manicured lawn, and Nathan felt the world tilt slightly on its axis. Her eyes were dark and serious, filled with a familiar determination that reached across time and memory to grab him by the throat. "Nathan!" Candace hissed again, her perfect smile never wavering for the cameras. But Nathan stood frozen at the altar, his carefully constructed world cracking around the edges as he stared at the ghost of his past embodied in a young girl's earnest face. Trevor followed his gaze, confusion clear in his expression. To him, she was just one of the catering staff's children, an unremarkable detail in the background of the grand event. But to Nathan, she was a mirror reflecting back 20 years of choices, successes, and compromises. The string quartet played on, the cameras rolled, the guests waited expectantly. But Nathan Cole, self-made millionaire and tech genius, stood transfixed, watching a little girl wipe tables with the same determination he'd once had when his dreams were bigger than his bank account and his heart was still whole. In that moment, all the trappings of success, the cameras, the sponsors, the carefully curated guest list, felt hollow against the simple authenticity of the girl's focused work. The contrast made his chest ache with a longing he'd thought he'd buried under years of achievement and accolades. The priest cleared his throat diplomatically, but Nathan barely heard him. The girl disappeared behind a service door, but the impact of her presence lingered like an aftershock, shaking the foundations of everything he'd built his life upon. The reception glittered with elegance under the late afternoon sun. Crystal glasses clinked as guests toasted the newlyweds, their laughter echoing across the vineyard's pristine grounds. Nathan smiled and nodded mechanically as photographers captured every moment, but his mind kept drifting to the little girl he'd seen earlier. Between poses and sound bites for social media, his eyes scanned the crowd. Candace held court near the champagne fountain, surrounded by influencers and fashion bloggers who hung on her every word. Taking advantage of her distraction, Nathan slipped away from the main gathering. He found the child near the dessert tables, carefully collecting abandoned plates and half-eaten cupcakes. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, her small hands managing the heavy serving tray with determined focus. A white apron, clearly borrowed from an adult uniform, was tied twice around her tiny waist. As she worked, she hummed softly to herself. The melody stopped Nathan in his tracks. It was a gentle Spanish lullaby, one he hadn't heard in nearly 2 decades. The same song Maria used to sing while making dinner in their tiny apartment, back when love seemed simpler than spreadsheets and stock options. The little girl moved with careful precision, gathering scattered napkins and straightening chair cushions. Her dark hair fell in waves around her face, reminding him so much of someone else that his chest ached. He watched her methodically clean each table, taking pride in her work despite her young age. Making his way closer, Nathan crouched down to her eye level. "Thank you for helping keep everything so nice," he said softly, trying not to startle her. She jumped slightly anyway, and the sudden movement sent her tray of water glasses tipping. Water splashed across the stone patio, and the little girl's eyes went wide with dismay. "I'm sorry," she gasped, looking frantically around for something to clean up the spill. "It's okay, sweetheart," Nathan said quickly, already reaching for nearby napkins. He knelt beside her, helping to mop up the water. "These things happen. Don't worry about it." The girl stopped moving. Instead of continuing to clean, she turned to face him fully. Her dark eyes met his with an intensity that seemed far too mature for her age. In that quiet moment, she said softly, "Mommy says you're my daddy." The world seemed to stop spinning. The reception music faded to a distant hum. Guests continued laughing and dancing mere feet away, but Nathan felt suspended in a bubble of silence, where nothing existed except this child's honest gaze and the words that had just shattered his carefully constructed reality. His mind raced, taking in details he'd been too shocked to process before. Her face, those eyes, that determined little chin. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, just like Maria used to do. The name tag pinned somewhat crookedly to her apron. Lila. Memories crashed over him like waves. Maria's last voicemail, which he'd never returned. The way she'd stopped trying to reach him after a while. The timing. Dear God, the timing would be exactly right. Nathan stumbled backward, his fingers going numb. The crystal champagne flute he'd been holding slipped from his grasp, shattering on the stone patio. The sound finally broke through the bubble of unreality surrounding him. Heads turned, including Candace's. Her picture-perfect smile faltered as she took in the scene. Her new husband kneeling on the ground beside a child in a waitress uniform, surrounded by spilled water and broken glass. Her high heels clicked rapidly against the stone as she stormed over. "Nathan, what's going on?" Candace's voice was sharp, despite her attempt to maintain her camera-ready expression. "Who is this child?" But Nathan could barely hear her. He was lost in Lila's face, seeing now what he should have recognized, instantly. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her cheek, the determined set of her jaw. It was like looking at a photograph from 20 years ago. "She looks like Maria." The words escaped him in a whisper, meant more for himself than anyone else. But in the sudden silence that had fallen over their corner of the reception, they carried clearly enough for Candace to hear. The little girl, Lila, his daughter, stood quietly watching the adults, her small hands still clutching damp napkins. She showed no fear or uncertainty, only that same serious focus he'd noticed before. The focus that now struck him as so familiar, it hurt. Around them, the reception continued its picture-perfect celebration. Photographers snapped photos of laughing guests, waiters circulated with champagne, and the string quartet played on. But in this small corner of the party, time seemed frozen around 3 people. A new bride whose smile had vanished, a confused child with old eyes, and a man whose carefully constructed world had just crumbled beneath the weight of 5 simple words. Nathan's polished dress shoes squeaked against the industrial kitchen floor as he pushed past startled catering staff. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. Servers with loaded trays flattened themselves against walls to avoid his desperate rush through the narrow space. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air, along with the clatter of pots and the hiss of steam. And then he saw her. Maria Lopez stood at a prep station, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, wisps escaping around her face. Her navy uniform was faded from countless washes, the name tag slightly crooked. She looked exactly the same, and completely different all at once. Still beautiful, but with a weariness around her eyes that hadn't been there before. The ladle she'd been holding slipped from her fingers, clattering against the stainless steel floor. The sound echoed through the suddenly silent kitchen. She turned slowly, as if moving through water, until their eyes met. Nathan felt the impact like a physical blow. Those eyes, the same ones he'd just seen in Lila's face, held a universe of unspoken words. "Is she—" Nathan's voice cracked. He swallowed hard and tried again. "Is Lila yours?" Maria's chin lifted slightly. That familiar gesture of quiet dignity he remembered so well. "She's ours, Nathan." The simple words hit him like a punch to the gut. He gripped the edge of a nearby counter to steady himself. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. "Tell you." Maria's laugh held no humor. "How? When you changed your number? When you moved offices without leaving a forwarding address?" She wiped her hands on her apron, a nervous gesture. "Besides, I saw you everywhere, on magazine covers, cutting ribbons at charity events, standing next to supermodels. Your new life seemed complete." "My new life." Nathan's voice rose. "Maria, if I'd known." "Known what?" She interrupted quietly. "That the girl who believed in you when you were sleeping on a friend's couch had your baby? That would have made such a great story for your PR team, wouldn't it?" Nathan flinched. "That's not fair." "No," Maria agreed softly. "It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. But life rarely is." She turned back to her work, hands trembling slightly as she reached for another ladle. "Lila knows who you are, by the way. She sees your face on TV sometimes. She calls you my daddy who builds tall buildings." The simple statement broke something in Nathan's chest. He thought of all the missed moments. First steps, first words, first day of school. All while he'd been chasing success, believing it would fill the emptiness inside him. "I can fix this," he said desperately. "I can make it right. I have resources now. I can—" "What's going on in here?" A sharp voice cut through their conversation. The kitchen manager, a red-faced man in a chef's coat, stormed over. "Lopez, this is unacceptable. If you can't maintain professional standards, don't you dare speak to her that way!" Nathan snapped, drawing himself up to his full height. The manager's eyes widened as he recognized the groom from the reception. "Maria is worth 10 of your best employees." "Mr. Cole, I apologize. I didn't realize." "Save it." Nathan turned back to Maria, who was watching him with an unreadable expression. "Please let me fix everything. Whatever you need, a better job, a house, the best schools for Lila." "You can't fix 5 years in an hour, Nathan." Maria's voice was gentle but firm. "You can't buy back lost time. and you have a bride waiting for you out there." The mention of Candace hit him like a splash of cold water. He ran a shaking hand through his hair, loosening his bow tie. His perfectly tailored tuxedo suddenly felt like a stranger's clothes. Numbly, Nathan made his way back to the reception hall. The bright lights and cheerful music felt garish now, almost mocking. His tie hung undone around his neck, his hair disheveled. As he emerged from the kitchen, he caught sight of Candace's family, her father, her brothers, her society friends, all staring at him with thinly veiled hostility. He stood frozen in the doorway, a man caught between two worlds, the perfect life he'd constructed and the real one he'd left behind. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with incoming messages and notifications about the live stream. But for the first time in years, Nathan Cole couldn't bring himself to care about his public image. Through the crowd, he caught a glimpse of Lila helping an elderly guest with her chair. His daughter. The word echoed in his mind, changing everything. She moved with Maria's grace, but he could see himself in the determined set of her jaw, the careful way she approached each task. The weight of all his choices, past and present, pressed down on him like a physical thing. The glares from Candace's family burned into his back, but he barely noticed. His mind was still in that kitchen, with Maria's words echoing in his ears. "You can't fix 5 years in an hour." The elegant reception hall buzzed with whispers. Guests huddled in small groups, their champagne glasses forgotten as they stole glances at Nathan. His disheveled appearance and haunted expression fed the growing rumors. Candace, resplendent in her designer wedding gown, strode toward him with purpose. Her perfectly made-up face was tight with barely contained fury. "Nathan!" she hissed, gripping his arm. "What's going on? Who is that child?" The cameras continued rolling, their red lights blinking steadily. The live stream counter showed over 50,000 viewers watching their perfect wedding. Nathan looked at his new wife, then at the scattered faces of their guests. His chest felt tight. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "Here, now." Candace's fingers dug deeper into his arm. "Yes." Nathan gently removed her hand and took a step back. "That little girl, Lila, she's—" He swallowed hard, then straightened his shoulders. "She's my daughter." The words seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Someone's glass shattered on the floor. The cameras zoomed in closer, their operators practically salivating at the unfolding drama. Candace's face went from shock to disbelief to rage in the span of heartbeats. "What did you just say?" "I didn't know." Nathan tried to explain. "I just found out today. Her mother, Maria, she and I were together years ago, before—" The slap came fast and hard, the crack of it echoing off the glass walls. Candace's diamond rings left small scratches on his cheek. "You've humiliated me on my wedding day!" she screamed, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "In front of everyone, on live stream." She spun around, her white dress swishing like angry wings, and stormed toward the exit. Her mother hurried after her, shooting Nathan a venomous glare. Her father stepped forward, jaw clenched, but Nathan was already moving. He pushed past the press that had begun to swarm, ignoring the rapid-fire questions. "Mr. Cole, is this a secret love child? How long have you known? What does this mean for your marriage?" Outside, the sky had darkened. Fat raindrops began to fall, speckling the expensive stone pathway. Nathan spotted Maria and Lila heading toward the staff parking lot, their figures small against the sprawling vineyard landscape. "Maria!" he called out, breaking into a run. "Please wait!" Maria turned, holding Lila's hand. Her work uniform was getting soaked, but she stood straight and proud. "We need to go, Nathan." "No, please." He reached them, breathing hard. "Let's talk about this. We can figure something out." "Figure what out?" Maria asked softly. "Look around you, Nathan. This is your world now." She gestured at the luxury cars, the elaborate decorations, the army of staff. "Our world isn't yours anymore." "But Lila, Daddy?" Lila's small voice made him look down. She stood partially behind her mother, her dark eyes, his eyes, watching him with a mix of wonder and uncertainty. "Are you sad?" Nathan felt his throat close up. He crouched down, rain streaming down his face. "A little bit, sweetheart. But not because of you. Never because of you." Maria gently tugged Lila toward their car, an old Honda with rust spots on the doors. "Come on, Mija. It's time to go home." "Maria, please." Nathan tried one last time. "At least let me give you my number, or goodbye, Nathan." Maria helped Lila into the back seat. Through the window, his daughter pressed her small hand against the glass, her eyes sad but curious, as if trying to memorize his face. Nathan stood rooted to the spot as the car backed up and turned onto the dirt road leading away from the vineyard. The rain fell harder now, soaking through his expensive tuxedo, but he barely felt it. He watched until their tail lights disappeared around the bend, taking with them a future he'd never known he wanted. Hours later, Nathan walked through his empty mansion. The marble floors echoed his footsteps. Awards and magazine covers featuring his face lined the walls, tokens of success that suddenly meant nothing. He stepped out onto his balcony, overlooking the illuminated pool. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications, messages from his PR team, missed calls from Candace's lawyers, social media alerts about the wedding disaster. With a sudden surge of disgust, he pulled the phone from his pocket and hurled it into the pool. It made a small splash before sinking to the bottom, its screen still glowing faintly through the water. Nathan gripped the railing, staring at his reflection in the rippling surface. The man looking back at him was a stranger, successful, wealthy, and completely alone. "I built all this for nothing," he whispered to his distorted image. His hands shook slightly as he reached for his wallet. Behind his credit cards and business cards, tucked away where even Candace had never found it, was a worn photograph. Maria smiled up at him from the creased paper, her face young and full of hope. It had been taken at the diner where she worked, back when he was just a broke engineering student with big dreams. She'd believed in him then, had loved him before the money and the fame. The rain continued to fall, mixing with the tears he finally allowed himself to shed. Sunlight pierced through Nathan's bedroom windows, making his head throb. He hadn't slept more than 2 hours, tossing and turning with memories of Maria, Lila, and yesterday's disaster. His phone lay somewhere at the bottom of the pool, but the 60-inch television on his wall wouldn't let him escape reality. Tech mogul Nathan Cole's perfect wedding ends in shocking revelation, a news anchor announced, her expression carefully concerned. Sources say the bride, social media influencer Candace Monroe, has already contacted divorce attorneys. Images flashed across the screen, him running through the rain, Candace crying, guests whispering behind their hands. The worst was a blurry photo of Lila looking back through the car window. Some photographer had caught that private moment. Below it ran the caption, "Secret love child ruins billion-dollar wedding." Nathan grabbed the remote and jabbed the power button. The silence felt heavy in his massive bedroom. He dressed quickly, choosing plain jeans and a button-down shirt instead of his usual tailored suit. His reflection showed dark circles under his eyes and stubble on his chin, a far cry from the polished CEO everyone knew. He got into his Tesla, not sure where he was going until his hands turned the steering wheel downtown. The streets grew narrower, the buildings older. This part of town hadn't changed much in 6 years. When he stopped at a red light, a familiar neon sign caught his eye. The Silver Spoon Diner. His heart skipped. He used to spend hours there as a broke college student, nursing one cup of coffee while working on his startup ideas. Maria would slip him extra toast when her manager wasn't looking. Before he could talk himself out of it, Nathan pulled into the small parking lot. The asphalt was cracked, with weeds growing through. His expensive car looked out of place among the beat-up sedans and delivery trucks. The bell above the door jingled as he entered. The smell hit him immediately. Coffee, bacon, maple syrup. Metal fans whirred overhead, barely stirring the warm air. The vinyl booths were the same faded blue. The counter still had the same scratch near the register where he used to sit. "Be right with you," called a familiar voice, and Nathan's chest tightened. Maria moved between tables with practiced grace, coffee pot in hand, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She hadn't noticed him yet. He slid into a corner booth, watching her work. She looked tired, but moved with the same gentle efficiency he remembered, checking on elderly regulars by name, making small talk with truckers while refilling their cups. When she finally turned toward his section, he saw the moment she recognized him. Her steps faltered slightly, her smile freezing in place. She approached his table, professional mask firmly in place. "Good morning, sir. Coffee?" "Please," Nathan said softly, studying her face. Up close, he could see fine lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 6 years ago. Her name tag was slightly crooked on her faded uniform. Maria poured his coffee without meeting his eyes. "I'll give you a minute with the menu. Maria, I'm working, Nathan." Her voice was quiet but firm. "My shift ends at 11 o'clock. He nodded, understanding the boundary she was setting. For the next 2 hours, he nursed his coffee and picked at a plate of eggs, watching her move through her routine. Other waitresses whispered and pointed, clearly recognizing him from the morning news, but Maria remained focused on her tasks. At exactly 11 o'clock, she emerged from the back in street clothes, simple jeans and a worn t-shirt. Without a word, she slid into the booth across from him. Up close, her exhaustion was more apparent. "You look tired," he said softly. Single mothers usually are. She folded her hands on the table. "Why are you here, Nathan?" He struggled to find the right words. "I need to know everything. About Lila. About what happened after I left." Maria was quiet for a long moment, tracing a coffee stain on the table. "I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after you stopped returning my calls. I tried to reach you, but your number was disconnected. Then I saw your first magazine cover. Tech's rising star. You looked different, polished, like you belonged in that world. Maria, if I had known—" She held up a hand. "Let me finish. My mother helped me through the pregnancy. She watched Lila while I worked double shifts. We were doing okay, the three of us. But then Mama got sick. Cancer." Her voice caught slightly. "The medical bills. I had to take a third job, sewing aprons and uniforms for the restaurant supply company after Lila went to bed." Nathan felt sick. While he'd been building his empire, buying mansions and sports cars, Maria had been struggling to survive. "Why didn't you try to find me? I would have—" "What? Sent money?" Maria's eyes flashed. "I saw you on TV talking about your rags to riches story, how you'd reinvented yourself. The old Nathan, the one who sat in this booth for hours, dreaming big dreams with me. He was gone. I didn't want charity from a stranger." "She's my daughter," Nathan said quietly. "I had a right to know." "Yes, you did, and I should have tried harder to tell you. That's on me." Maria's shoulders slumped slightly. "But you left us first, Nathan. You changed your number, moved away, became someone else. Someone who needed a picture-perfect life with a picture-perfect wife." Nathan pulled out his wallet. "Let me help now. Whatever you need. A better apartment, a car, Lila's education." "No," Maria's voice was gentle but immovable. She doesn't need your fortune, Nathan. She needs her father to mean it, to show up for school plays and skinned knees, to read her bedtime stories and help with math homework. Money can't buy those things. He placed a $100 bill under his coffee cup anyway, as he stood. I want to make this right. Maria watched him walk to his car. As he reached for the door handle, he heard the diner's window slide open. The $100 bill fluttered down beside him. You can't buy your way into her heart. Maria called softly, then closed the window. Nathan picked up the money, his fingers trembling slightly. The sun was setting as he drove home, casting long shadows across the city. The familiar route felt different somehow, as if he was seeing everything through new eyes. Past the sleek office buildings where he'd built his success, past the exclusive neighborhoods where he'd tried to belong. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, determination settling in his chest. For the first time in years, he knew exactly what he needed to do, even if he had no idea how to do it. The morning sun hadn't yet cleared the buildings when Nathan pulled into the Silver Spoon Diner's parking lot. His Ferrari looked wildly out of place next to the staff's modest cars. He straightened his tie, a habit he couldn't shake, and pushed through the glass door. The breakfast rush was in full swing. The clatter of plates and sizzle of the grill filled the air, along with the rich aroma of coffee and bacon. Maria was balancing 3 plates along her arm, barely glancing his way as she hurried past. Nathan approached the counter where a stocky man in his 50s was calling out orders. His name tag read, Frank. Excuse me. Nathan cleared his throat. I'd like to speak with the manager. Frank turned, wiping his hands on his apron. You're looking at him, and I know who you are, Mr. Cole. Been all over the news. I want to volunteer here. Learn the business from the ground up. Frank's laugh was sharp and short. This ain't some fancy corporate training program. We've got real work to do. I know. I'll do anything. Wash dishes, bus tables, mop floors. No pay. Why? Frank's eyes narrowed. Some kind of PR stunt. Nathan watched Maria refilling coffee cups across the room. No cameras, no press. Just me, learning how to work again. Frank studied him for a long moment. 1 week. You mess up once, you're out. Start with dishes. There's an extra apron in the back. The kitchen was a stark contrast to Nathan's immaculate home kitchen. Steam rose from industrial sinks, and towers of dirty plates waited like small mountains. A teenage boy named Joey showed him the basics: scrape, rinse, load the dishwasher, repeat. By noon, Nathan's designer shirt was soaked through. His hands burned from the hot water, and blisters were forming on his palms. The constant motion of bending, lifting, and reaching used muscles he'd forgotten he had. You're holding up better than I expected, Joey commented during a rare, quiet moment. Most new guys quit by lunch. Nathan managed a tired smile. I used to wash dishes at a truck stop when I was 16. Guess some things you don't forget. Throughout the day, customers would peer into the kitchen, phones ready to snap pictures of the fallen millionaire. But Nathan kept his head down, focused on each dish, each task. He learned the rhythm of the kitchen, when to speed up during rushes, how to stack plates efficiently, which cooks needed their tools washed first. Maria moved through the kitchen like a ghost, neither avoiding him nor acknowledging him. But he caught her watching him once, a puzzled expression on her face when he was carefully wiping down the industrial mixer. Around 3 o'clock, the bell above the door chimed. A small voice called out, "Mommy!" Lila bounced in wearing a purple backpack almost as big as she was. Her dark curls were tied back in uneven pigtails, and her shoes lit up with each step. She spotted Nathan through the kitchen window and waved shyly. "Hello, Lila," he said softly, his heart doing a strange flutter. She settled at the counter with her homework, occasionally sneaking glances at him. After a while, she pulled out some crayons and began drawing. When Nathan emerged from the kitchen to clear nearby tables, she tugged on his wet apron. "This is for you," she whispered, holding up a crayon drawing. Nathan's throat tightened as he studied the picture. A huge house stood next to a tiny table where stick figures sat together. "Is this us?" he asked. Lila nodded. "That's your big house, but we're eating at our small table 'cause Mummy says it's more comfy." Nathan carefully rolled up the drawing and found an old frame in the storage room. He hung it between the fire extinguisher and the employee schedule, stepping back to admire it. Joey appeared beside him. "Cute kid," he said. "She's got your eyes." "Yeah," Nathan replied, touching the frame gently. "She does." The dinner rush came and went. Nathan's muscles screamed in protest, but he kept working until every surface gleamed. As he walked to his car, he saw Maria and Lila heading home under the streetlights. Lila skipped ahead, counting cracks in the sidewalk, while Maria watched her with tired eyes and a gentle smile. Without thinking, Nathan fell into step beside them. Nobody spoke. The only sounds were Lila's counting and the distant hum of traffic. The simplicity of it, just walking together in the growing dark, filled something in him he hadn't known was empty. Later that night, Nathan sat in his vast dining room, eating leftover pancakes from a paper plate. The mansion felt different somehow. Too big, too quiet, too perfect. He thought about the warm chaos of the diner, about Lila's drawing, about Maria's quiet strength. And then, surprising himself, he laughed. It started small but grew until he was doubled over, shoulders shaking. He couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed like this, real, unguarded joy bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. The sound echoed off the marble floors and designer walls, and for the first time in months, maybe years, Nathan Cole felt truly, wonderfully alive. His hands still stung from the hot water and industrial soap. His expensive clothes smelled like grease and coffee. His back ached from hours of manual labor. But as he sat there, eating cold pancakes in his $1,000,000 home, he realized he'd never been happier. The days melted into one another at the Silver Spoon Diner as Nathan settled into his new routine. Each morning brought fresh challenges, but also precious moments with Lila, who grew bolder in her curiosity about the father she was just beginning to know. One afternoon, while Nathan wiped down tables, Lila perched on a nearby stool, swinging her legs back and forth. Her backpack lay open beside her, stuffed, animals peeking out between school papers. "What's your favorite ice cream?" she asked, drawing circles on her math homework. Nathan paused, cloth in hand. "Mint chocolate chip." "What's yours?" "Strawberry with rainbow sprinkles." Lila's eyes lit up. "Do you have any pets?" "I have a golden retriever named Max." "Really?" Lila bounced in her seat. "Can I meet him sometime? I always wanted a dog, but Mommy says our apartment's too small." Nathan's heart squeezed. "Maybe someday. He'd love you. He's great with kids." "Is your car really that shiny black one outside? The one that looks like a spaceship?" Nathan chuckled. "That's my Tesla. Would you like to see inside?" Maria appeared then, coffee pot in hand, giving Nathan a warning look. He quickly added, "With your mum's permission, of course." The questions continued throughout the week. What was his favorite color? Did he like pizza? Could he do cartwheels? Each innocent query revealed more about their lives. How Maria worked double shifts to make rent. How Lila spent afternoons with their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. How she wished for things Nathan had taken for granted. One evening, as Nathan helped Lila with her reading, she grew unusually quiet. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" he asked. Lila traced the edge of her book with one finger. "Next week is family night at school. Everyone's supposed to bring someone for show and tell." She looked up at him with those familiar eyes. I wish I had a daddy to bring." Nathan's throat tightened. Before he could respond, Maria approached, having overheard. She'd been keeping her distance, watching their interactions with cautious eyes. "Actually," Lila continued, gaining courage, "Mrs. Bennet said parents can volunteer to read stories to the class. Could you maybe—" "I'd love to," Nathan said immediately, looking to Maria for approval. Maria hesitated, studying his face. After a long moment, she nodded slowly. "No cameras," she said firmly. "No press, just you and a book." "Just me and a book," Nathan promised. The night of family night, Nathan parked his Tesla several blocks from the elementary school, not wanting to draw attention. He'd traded his usual tailored suit for worn jeans and a soft flannel shirt. In his hands, he clutched a well-loved copy of The Giving Tree. The kindergarten classroom buzzed with activity. Children darted between parents, showing off artwork and cubbies. Lila spotted him from across the room and ran over, throwing her arms around his waist. "You came," she exclaimed. "Of course I did, Princess." The nickname slipped out naturally, and Lila's smile grew even brighter. Maria stood by the wall, watching them. She wore her diner uniform, having come straight from work, but her hair was freshly brushed, and she'd added a touch of lipstick. Nathan caught her eye and nodded respectfully. Mrs. Bennet, a warm woman with silver-streaked hair, gathered the children onto a colorful reading carpet. Parents settled into tiny chairs around the edges of the room. Nathan sat cross-legged on a special stool, opened the book, and began to read. Once there was a tree, and she loved a little boy. His voice, usually confident in boardrooms and press conferences, grew soft and gentle. He showed the pictures to the children, making sure everyone could see. When he reached the part where the boy returned as a tired old man, Nathan's voice cracked slightly. And the tree was happy. The children clapped enthusiastically. Lila beamed with pride, turning to her classmates and announcing, "That's my daddy." After the story, as parents mingled over cookies and juice, Maria approached Nathan. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did," Nathan replied. "I've missed so much already." A parent nearby was sneaking photos with her phone, recognition dawning on her face. Nathan saw the flash but chose to ignore it, focusing instead on Lila as she showed him her desk and her favorite drawing of a rainbow unicorn. Later that night, as they walked to their cars, Lila slipped her small hand into Nathan's. The stars twinkled overhead, and the spring air carried the scent of jasmine. They walked in comfortable silence, Lila occasionally hopping over cracks in the sidewalk. Maria followed a few steps behind, keys jingling in her hand. Her expression was thoughtful, torn between protecting her daughter and acknowledging the genuine connection growing between father and child. Unknown to them, the photo from family night was already circulating online. "Billionaire Nathan Cole reads to local kindergarten class." The simple moment they'd shared would soon draw unwanted attention, but for now, under the starlit sky, they were just a father and daughter walking hand in hand, with a mother watching over them both, her heart caught between hope and fear. The moonlight cast long shadows as they reached their cars. Lila hugged Nathan's legs tightly. "Thank you for being my show-and-tell, Daddy," she whispered. Nathan knelt down to her level, his eyes misty. "Thank you for letting me be here." Maria waited by her old sedan, her face softened by the gentle glow of the street lamps. As Lila skipped to join her mother, Nathan saw Maria's expression, a mixture of gratitude and caution, of memories and possibilities. The night air held a hint of promise, even as storm clouds gathered on the distant horizon. For now, though, there was only this moment, a little girl waving goodbye to her father, a mother allowing herself to believe in second chances, and a man learning that the simplest gifts, a story, a hand to hold, a child's trust, were worth more than all his millions. The morning sun hadn't yet risen when Maria's phone started buzzing. Text messages flooded in from co-workers, followed by urgent calls from numbers she didn't recognize. Confused, she opened her social media to find her quiet world exploding. The photo from family night had gone viral overnight. There it was, Nathan Cole, the famous millionaire, sitting cross-legged on a kindergarten reading stool with Lila's beaming face in the front row. The caption read, "Billionaire Nathan Cole reads to local kindergarten class. Heartwarming father-daughter moment." Maria's hands shook as she scrolled through thousands of shares and comments. By 6 o'clock in the morning, news vans were already parked outside the Silver Spoon Diner. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, helping Lila get dressed for school. "Baby, we might need to go out the back way today." When they arrived at the diner, reporters swarmed their car like bees. Camera flashes lit up the dim morning, making Lila hide her face in her mother's shirt. "Miss Lopez, how long have you known Nathan Cole? Is it true you kept his child secret? Was this a planned reunion?" Inside, the diner's regular customers huddled in their booths, shooting uncomfortable glances at the media circus outside. Jerry, the owner, stood behind the counter with his arms crossed, face like thunder. "Maria," he called out, gesturing her over. "A word?" In the cramped office that smelled of coffee and old receipts, Jerry didn't mince words. "This attention. It's bad for business. Our regulars can't even get in the door." "I'm sorry," Maria said, her voice tight. "I never wanted this." The bell above the door chimed constantly as reporters tried to sneak in for interviews. The other waitresses were overwhelmed, dealing with both the regular breakfast rush and curious onlookers hoping to catch a glimpse of Nathan Cole's secret family. By mid-morning, Nathan arrived, pushing through the crowd. His face was drawn with worry. "Maria, I'm so sorry. I had no idea this would happen." She whirled on him, eyes flashing. "Didn't you? Isn't this exactly what you wanted? More attention? More drama?" "No, I swear I didn't plan this. Someone at the school must have—" "Save it," Maria snapped. "You've lived in this spotlight so long, you've forgotten what it's like for normal people. We had peace here, Nathan. Real peace." The diner phone rang constantly. Jerry unplugged it after the 20th call from a talk show producer. Nathan tried to help the only way he knew how. He called a press conference outside his office building downtown, hoping to redirect the attention away from the diner. Dressed in his usual impeccable suit, he faced the cameras with practiced ease. "Yes, Maria Lopez and our daughter Lila are my family. My real family. I ask that you respect their privacy during this time of reconnection." But his words had the opposite effect. By afternoon, paparazzi had discovered Maria's apartment building. They camped out on the sidewalk with long lens cameras, hoping to catch mother and daughter coming home. Maria's phone rang again. This time it was Lila's school. "Mrs. Lopez, we have reporters at the gates. They're trying to photograph the children during recess. We think it's best if you pick Lila up early." Maria's hands trembled as she hung up. She looked at Nathan, who stood helplessly nearby. "Do you see now? Do you see what your world does to people?" She found Lila hiding under her desk at school, tears streaking her cheeks. "Mommy, why are there scary people with cameras?" "Oh, baby." Maria gathered her daughter close, feeling her small body shake with sobs. "They'll go away soon, I promise." But by evening, the situation had only gotten worse. News helicopters circled their neighborhood. Online forums exploded with theories about Maria and Nathan's past relationship. Someone had dug up old photos from when they dated, spreading them across social media. Maria finally broke down in their small apartment, after pulling all the blinds shut. "You've ruined everything!" she screamed at Nathan, who had followed them home to help. "We had a life here. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Now what are we supposed to do?" Lila sat on the couch, clutching her stuffed rabbit, watching her parents with wide, frightened eyes. "I'll fix this," Nathan promised, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. "I'll hire security, get restraining orders. More money, more power, more control." Maria's voice cracked. "That's all you know, isn't it? You can't buy your way out of this mess, Nathan. You can't protect us from your world. It's already swallowed us whole." The weight of her words crushed him. For the first time in years, Nathan Cole felt completely powerless. All his wealth, all his influence, meant nothing in the face of this chaos he'd inadvertently created. Around midnight, after Maria had refused his offers to help and sent him away, Nathan found himself in St. Michael's Church. The empty sanctuary echoed with his footsteps as he made his way to a pew near the front. The moonlight filtered through stained glass windows, casting colored shadows across his face. Nathan sank to his knees, something he hadn't done since he was a child in his grandmother's church. "Lord," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion, "I keep breaking what I love." His shoulders shook as tears finally came. "Everything I touch falls apart. Please, please teach me how to stop." The church remained silent except for his quiet sobs. Outside, camera flashes still lit up the night like artificial lightning, hunting for the next shot of the millionaire's secret family. But inside the sanctuary, Nathan Cole knelt alone, stripped of his power and pretenses, finally facing the truth that some things couldn't be fixed with money or influence. Some things required a different kind of strength entirely. His whispered prayers echoed in the vast space, a broken man asking for guidance in the only place left where cameras couldn't reach, and headlines didn't matter. Here, in the midnight quiet, he was no longer Nathan Cole the millionaire, but simply a father who had lost his way and was desperate to find it back. The morning after the media storm, Maria arrived at the Silver Spoon Diner to find Jerry, the owner, waiting by the entrance. His weathered face looked older than usual, creased with worry lines that hadn't been there the day before. "Maria," he said softly, wringing his hands, "can we talk in my office?" The small room smelled of coffee and old paperwork. Maria sat in the squeaky chair where she'd had her first interview 8 years ago. Jerry couldn't meet her eyes. "The publicity," he began, his voice trailing off. "The reporters, they're scaring away our regulars. Mrs. Henderson called to cancel her bridge club's weekly breakfast. The book club, too." He shuffled some papers on his desk. "I can't afford to lose our loyal customers, Maria. You understand, right?" Maria felt the floor shift beneath her feet. "Jerry, please. I've worked here since Lila was born. These people are like family." I know. He pushed an envelope across the desk. "There's 2 weeks severance. I'm sorry, Maria. I truly am." She walked out of the diner in a daze, clutching her apron. The morning sun felt too bright, too harsh. Reporters called out questions, cameras flashing, but their voices seemed distant, like she was underwater. That afternoon, Nathan showed up at her apartment, his face drawn with concern. "I heard about the diner. Maria, let me help. I have a position open, managing my charitable foundation. The salary is excellent, full benefits." "No." Maria's voice was firm. "I won't trade one cage for another." "It's not a cage," Nathan protested. "It's an opportunity. An opportunity created by your mistakes." The words burst out of her. "Everything you touch becomes part of your world, Nathan. Your controlled, perfect world where money fixes everything. But I won't let you fix this. I won't let you turn our lives into another chapter of your success story." Lila appeared in the doorway of her room, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Mommy, why are you yelling at Daddy?" Maria's heart clenched. She knelt beside her daughter, smoothing her dark curls. "Baby, we need some time away from Daddy right now." "But why?" Lila's lower lip trembled. "I like when he reads me stories." "Because—" Maria searched for words a 5-year-old could understand. "Because love needs quiet to grow. Like the flowers we planted on the windowsill, remember? They need peace and stillness to bloom." Lila looked at Nathan, her eyes filling with tears. He took a step forward, but Maria shook her head. He left without another word, the door closing softly behind him. Back in his mansion, Nathan wandered through rooms that suddenly felt as cold as mausoleums. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic shadows on marble floors. Every surface gleamed with perfection, but the space felt empty, dead. His phone buzzed constantly, Trevor, his assistant, trying to manage the PR crisis. Nathan ignored the calls. He stood in his home theater, staring at the 80-inch screen that now seemed meaningless. In his office, awards and accolades gathered dust. The house that had once represented his triumph now felt like a tomb where his dreams lay buried. A knock at her door that evening startled Maria. She opened it to find Mrs. Dorothy Cooper, her elderly neighbor, standing there with a casserole dish. "Thought you might need some comfort food," the older woman said, her kind eyes taking in Maria's tear-stained face. "And maybe a place to stay for a while, until those vultures with cameras leave?" Mrs. Cooper's apartment was everything Maria's wasn't. Cluttered with memories, walls covered in family photos, and cross-stitch samplers with Bible verses. It smelled of cinnamon and fresh bread. Lila immediately curled up in an overstuffed armchair, fascinated by a collection of porcelain dolls. "The press will find something new to chase soon enough," Mrs. Cooper said, serving tea in delicate cups. "But in the meantime, my spare room is yours." Later that night, after Lila was asleep in the guest room, Maria broke down. "I don't know what to do," she confessed. "Nathan wants to help, but accepting his help means accepting his world, and his world destroys everything simple and real." Mrs. Cooper listened, her weathered hands folded in her lap. "You know, dear, sometimes forgiveness is the poorest man's richest gift." She smiled gently. "It costs nothing to give, but its value is beyond measure." "It's not about forgiveness," Maria protested. "It's about protecting what we have." "Is it?" Mrs. Cooper's voice was gentle. "Or is it about fear? Fear that loving him might mean losing yourself?" As December brought the first snow, Nathan found himself driving past the diner nearly every day. The windows were boarded up now, the neon sign dark. The place where he'd first started to understand real happiness stood abandoned, another casualty of his complicated life. One evening he parked his car and walked to the door. In his hand he held an envelope containing one of Lila's drawings, the one she'd made of their family standing together. On the back, he wrote a simple note. "I'm learning to be still." He slipped it through the mail slot, knowing Maria still collected the mail for Jerry. Then he stood in the falling snow, leaving his expensive coat open to the cold. The icy wind cut through his shirt, but he welcomed it. This discomfort, this small suffering felt right, a penance for the chaos he'd brought to their lives. Snowflakes gathered in his hair and on his shoulders as he stood there, remembering simpler times. Times when success meant making Maria smile, when wealth was measured in shared dreams, not dollar signs. The cold seeped into his bones, but still he stood, letting the silence of the falling snow wash over him. In that moment, surrounded by swirling white and the ghosts of what might have been, Nathan Cole finally understood what Maria had meant about love needing quiet to grow. He'd spent years making noise, with his money, his success, his constant need to fix and control. Now, in the stillness of a snowy evening outside a closed diner, he began to learn a different kind of language, the language of patience, of acceptance, of letting go. The snow continued to fall, covering the city in a blanket of white, muffling the sounds of traffic and footsteps. Nathan remained motionless, his breath visible in the cold air, feeling each snowflake as a small reminder of the simple beauty he'd forgotten how to see. The shelter's kitchen wasn't anything fancy, just industrial steel sinks, well-worn counters, and the constant hum of fluorescent lights. But for Nathan Cole, it became a sanctuary. Every morning he'd slip on a plain white apron, roll up his sleeves, and lose himself in the rhythm of scrubbing pots and pans. "Hey, new guy," called Marcus, the head cook. "Got another stack for you." Nathan nodded, accepting the tower of crusty dishes. His hands, once soft from board meetings and luxury cars, were now rough and red from hot water and harsh soap. But he didn't mind. Each dish felt like a small step toward something real. The shelter staff knew him only as Nick, just another volunteer trying to make a difference. He'd ditched his designer clothes for simple jeans and work shirts, trimmed his perfectly styled hair short, and grown a slight beard. Nobody connected him to the billionaire whose face used to grace magazine covers. Between loads of dishes, Nathan fixed things. The shelter's ancient heating system groaned and sputtered until he spent a weekend studying the manual and replacing worn-out parts. When the industrial dishwasher broke down, he stayed late into the night, watching YouTube tutorials until he got it running again. "You're pretty handy for a dishwasher," remarked Sarah, the shelter director, one evening. Nathan shrugged, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Just trying to help where I can." At home, his massive house felt different now. Instead of hosting lavish parties, he spent evenings in his study with a worn Bible he'd bought at a second-hand store. The pages were annotated by previous owners, their underlined verses and margin notes telling stories of other souls seeking guidance. One cold Saturday morning, Nathan noticed a young boy at the shelter, wearing only a thin jacket. Without fanfare, he went to a nearby store and bought 30 winter coats in various sizes. He left them at the shelter's front desk with a simple note, "For whoever needs them." The following week, he overheard 2 veterans talking about their broken-down cars, their only means of getting to work. Nathan, who'd learned mechanics from his uncle as a teenager, offered to take a look. Soon, he was spending weekends in old parking lots, teaching them basic repairs while they shared stories of service and struggle. "You know what's funny?" one veteran named Jim said, wiping grease from his hands. "I used to think all rich folks were stuck up, but that Nathan Cole guy saw on the news he's been doing good, things around town. Anonymous-like. Maybe some of them get it after all." Nathan ducked under the car's hood to hide his smile. Word spread through the community about mysterious donations appearing just when needed. New equipment for the food bank, repairs at the women's shelter, scholarships for local kids. Each gift was signed simply NC and came with no strings attached. Maria noticed the changes in their neighborhood. The community center got a new roof. The playground equipment was repaired. Even the diner, though still closed, had its broken windows quietly fixed one weekend. One evening, while helping Mrs. Cooper and Lila bake Christmas cookies, Maria watched her daughter carefully decorating sugar cookies with green and red icing. "Mommy, look!" Lila held up a cookie shaped like a heart. "I made it for Daddy. Do you think he likes cookies?" Maria's throat tightened. "I'm sure he does, sweetheart." Mrs. Cooper gently squeezed Maria's shoulder. "The Lord works in mysterious ways," she said softly. "Sometimes the longest journeys lead us right back home." Later, while cleaning up Lila's backpack for school the next day, Maria found a crumpled receipt. Her heart stopped when she read it, a $5,000 donation to the local food pantry, signed NC. The paper trembled in her hands. She remembered Nathan's words about fixing everything and how hollow they'd sounded then. But this was different. These quiet acts of kindness weren't about fixing or controlling. They were about serving, about understanding the kind of love that asks for nothing in return. In her tiny bedroom at Mrs. Cooper's apartment, Maria knelt beside her bed. The last time she'd prayed was the night she'd discovered she was pregnant with Lila. Now, tears rolling down her cheeks, she clasped her hands together. "Lord," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "maybe he's changing, and maybe I am too. Help me understand what that means. Help me be brave enough to believe in second chances." Through the wall, she could hear Lila giggling as Mrs. Cooper read her a bedtime story. The sound mixed with the quiet whisper of falling snow outside, creating a melody of peace. A gentle reminder that sometimes the greatest miracles happen in the smallest moments of surrender. The receipt lay on her nightstand, its simple signature, NC, catching the soft lamplight. In those two letters, Maria saw not the wealthy man who'd left her, but the boy she'd first fallen in love with, the one who'd dreamed of making the world better, who'd looked at her like she was magic. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the city in a blanket of white, each flake a tiny testament to the possibility of transformation. In the quiet of her room, Maria's prayer lingered, a bridge between what was and what could be, between broken promises and new beginnings. The first hints of spring whispered through downtown, with tiny green buds pushing through winter-worn branches. Maria stood at her mailbox in the crisp morning air, sorting through the usual stack of bills and advertisements. An official-looking envelope from the city caught her eye. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. The letter inside made her catch her breath. The Silver Spoon Diner, her old workplace, her second home, had been purchased and transformed into a non-profit community restaurant called Grace's Table. The new establishment would serve free meals to struggling families while offering regular-priced meals to paying customers. But what made her heart skip was the final paragraph. An offer to manage the entire operation, complete with a generous salary and benefits. The letter was signed by the board of directors, but Maria knew. She knew who was behind this. That afternoon, while Mrs. Cooper watched Lila, Maria drove to the familiar street corner. The old diner's transformation was already underway. Gone were the boarded-up windows and faded sign. Fresh paint brightened the exterior, and new flower boxes hung beneath sparkling windows. Through the glass, she could see people working inside. And there, in the middle of it all, was Nathan Cole. He wore worn jeans and a faded t-shirt, his hands covered in work gloves as he painted alongside a group of volunteers. Paint speckled his hair, and a smudge marked his cheek. He looked nothing like the polished businessman from the wedding, and somehow more like himself than he had in years. When the bell above the door chimed, Nathan turned. Their eyes met, and for a moment time seemed to pause. Then he smiled, not his camera-ready smile, but the shy, genuine one she remembered from their early days. "Could use a hand, boss," he said softly, offering her a clean paintbrush. Maria stood frozen, the letter clutched in her hand. The space smelled of fresh paint and possibility. Memories flooded back, of late-night conversations over coffee, of dreams shared in whispers, of a love that had once felt as natural as breathing. She looked around at the volunteers, regular folks from the neighborhood, working together to rebuild something beautiful. This wasn't about Nathan's money or power. This was about community, about second chances, about grace. Slowly, Maria set down her purse. She rolled up her sleeves and took the offered paintbrush. "The trim needs another coat," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. They worked side by side that day, barely speaking but moving in an old, familiar rhythm. Other volunteers came and went, but Nathan and Maria stayed until sunset, painting walls and hanging curtains. They didn't talk about the past or make promises about the future. Instead, they focused on the present, on making each brushstroke count, on building something new from the ashes of what was lost. The following weeks brought a gentle routine. Maria arrived early each morning to oversee deliveries and plan menus. Nathan worked alongside the maintenance crew, fixing leaky faucets and wobbly tables. They kept their interactions professional, but sometimes their fingers would brush while passing plates, or their eyes would meet across the room, and that old spark would flicker. Lila joined them after school, proudly wearing a child-sized apron with "Little Helper" embroidered across the front. She bounced between tables, offering customers extra napkins and sharing stories with anyone who would listen. "My mommy and daddy are making this place beautiful," she'd announce, beaming with pride. Neither Maria nor Nathan corrected her use of the word daddy anymore. The diner began to pulse with new life. Regular customers returned, drawn by Maria's familiar smile and the comfort food they remembered. But now they sat alongside new faces, families struggling to make ends meet, elderly neighbors living on fixed incomes, young students stretching their dollars. Grace's table lived up to its name. The walls, now painted in warm yellows and soft blues, seemed to embrace everyone who entered. The menu offered both standard prices and a pay-what-you-can option. Those who could afford more often did, helping to cover meals for those who couldn't. Maria watched it all from behind the counter, her heart full. She saw businessmen in suits sharing tables with construction workers, wealthy retirees chatting with single mothers, children from different backgrounds playing together while their parents ate. This was more than a restaurant. It was becoming a bridge between different worlds. One evening, as the sunset painted the freshly cleaned windows in gold, Maria found Nathan fixing a broken chair in the back room. He worked with careful concentration, his movements precise and patient. "You didn't have to do all this," she said quietly. Nathan looked up, his eyes serious. "I know, I wanted to. Not to fix things between us, though I hope someday." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I wanted to give back what this place gave me. Hope, community, a chance to be better." Maria nodded, understanding. The silver spoon had been where they'd first met, where they'd fallen in love, where they'd dreamed of a future together. Now, as Grace's table, it was where they were learning to trust again, not in grand gestures or promises, but in small acts of kindness and steady presence. The dinner rush began, bringing with it the comfortable chaos of clinking plates and overlapping conversations. Maria moved behind the counter, while Nathan grabbed an apron to help serve. Leela darted between them, delivering sugar packets and brightening the room with her laughter. Looking around at the full tables, at the mix of faces both familiar and new, at the way light and love seemed to fill every corner, Maria felt something shift in her heart. This wasn't the ending of their story, but perhaps it wasn't meant to be. Perhaps it was just another beginning, one built not on dreams of perfection, but on the beautiful, messy reality of people trying their best to love well. As spring deepened into summer, the evenings at Grace's table grew longer and warmer. The last customers would drift out into the twilight, leaving behind empty coffee cups and crumb-scattered plates. It was during these quiet moments, when the day's work was done, that Nathan and Maria began to find their way back to each other. "Would you like to grab coffee?" Nathan asked one evening, his voice carrying a hint of nervousness that seemed strange coming from a man who once commanded boardrooms. There's that place around the corner that stays open late. Maria hesitated, then nodded. Let me just text Mrs. Cooper to check on Lila. These after-hours meetings became a gentle routine. Sometimes they'd sit in the corner booth of the all-night cafe, sharing slices of pie and memories. Other times they'd walk through the neighborhood park, their footsteps matching pace as streetlights flickered on above them. One sunny Saturday, Nathan suggested a picnic. Lila bounced with excitement as they spread a checkered blanket beneath an old oak tree. She chased butterflies while Maria unpacked sandwiches and Nathan poured lemonade into paper cups. I never had this growing up, Nathan said quietly, watching Lila twirl in the sunshine. Foster homes weren't big on family outings. Maria's hands stilled on the container of fruit she was opening. You never really talked about that before? Nathan drew in a deep breath. 17 homes in 12 years. Some were okay. Most weren't. He plucked at the grass beside the blanket. I learned early that nothing was permanent. That's why He trailed off, but Maria understood. That's why he'd run when things got real between them. The last home was the worst. He continued. I was 16. The father drank. I spent most nights at the public library reading about successful businessmen. I promised myself I'd never be powerless again. He laughed softly. Funny how all that power didn't make me any less scared. Maria reached across the blanket and touched his hand. I used to pray for you, you know, even after everything. Not that you'd come back, just that you'd find peace. Nathan's eyes met hers, filled with wonder. You did? She nodded. Every night for a year. Then just sometimes. When Lila would ask about you, or when I'd see your face on magazines. Dad! Lila's voice rang out across the park. Dad, look what I found! She ran toward them, clutching wildflowers in her small fists. Nathan froze, his eyes growing wet. It was the first time she'd called him that without prompting. Maria squeezed his hand. Those are beautiful, sweetheart, he managed to say as Lila dropped the flowers into his lap. That evening, Mrs. Cooper invited them all for dinner. Her small house smelled of pot roast and fresh-baked rolls. Family photos covered the walls, and a well-worn Bible sat open on the coffee table. Everybody join hands, Mrs. Cooper said when they gathered around her dining table. Lord, we thank you for this food, for bringing these precious souls together, and for second chances we don't deserve. Amen. Nathan's voice cracked on his Amen. Maria saw him brush away tears when he thought no one was looking. After dinner, while Maria and Mrs. Cooper cleaned up, Nathan helped Lila with her bedtime routine in the guest room where she and Maria were staying. He sat on the edge of her small bed, the giving tree in his hands, the same book he'd read at her school months ago. Once there was a tree, he began, his voice soft in the lamplight. And she loved a little boy. Lila snuggled closer as he read, her eyes growing heavy. When he finished, she reached up and kissed his cheek. You sound like the man in the story now, she whispered. What do you mean, sweetheart? You learned how to give love instead of stuff? Nathan sat there long after Lila fell asleep, tears rolling silently down his cheeks. In the gentle darkness, surrounded by his daughter's steady breathing and the distant sounds of Maria and Mrs. Cooper talking in the kitchen, he felt something settle in his soul, a peace he'd chased but never caught, finally finding him when he stopped running. The moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows on Lila's sleeping face. Nathan touched her hair gently, marveling at how this small person had changed everything. His mansions and achievements felt hollow compared to this moment, this quiet joy of simply being present, of being Dad. Maria found him there later, still sitting in the dark, smiling through his tears. She didn't speak, just stood in the doorway watching father and daughter, her own heart full of gratitude for answered prayers and the mysterious ways love finds its way home. Through the open window came the sounds of crickets and distant traffic, the ordinary music of a summer night. But to Nathan, it was the sweetest symphony he'd ever heard, the sound of belonging, of family, of grace made real in the most unexpected ways. The morning sun streamed through Grace's table's freshly cleaned windows, catching dust motes in golden shafts of light. Nathan wiped down the counter, humming along with the oldies station playing overhead. The diner had become his sanctuary over the past months, a place where titles and bank accounts meant nothing, where worth was measured in smiles and full bellies. "Order up!" Maria called from the kitchen, sliding 2 plates of steaming pancakes through the window. Her eyes met Nathan's, and they shared a quiet smile. These small moments had become precious to them both. The bell above the door chimed. Nathan looked up, his smile faltering as Elliot Vance strode in, designer suit stark against the diner's humble decor. Nathan hadn't seen his former business partner since backing out of their tech merger 6 months ago. "Well, well," Elliot drawled, sliding onto a bar stool. "From penthouse to pancake house. Quite a fall, Nathan." Nathan kept his voice steady. "What brings you here, Elliot? Can't a guy check on an old friend?" Elliot's smile didn't reach his eyes. He drummed manicured fingers on the counter. "Though I must say, this whole Father Teresa act is getting old. Playing poor won't make up for what you owe me." "I don't owe you anything," Nathan said quietly, conscious of the elderly couple having breakfast nearby. "The merger wasn't right. You knew those companies were struggling." Elliot leaned forward. $300 million, Nathan. That deal would have made us both legends. Instead, you're here, flipping burgers and pretending to be reformed." He gestured around the diner. "How much did this little publicity stunt cost you? 20 million? 30? Nathan felt heat rise in his neck. "It's not a stunt." "Everything's a stunt with people like us," Elliot scoffed. "You think these people care about your transformation? They just want your money. That woman in there?" He jerked his head toward the kitchen. "She's playing you like a fiddle." "Don't." Nathan's voice turned to steel. "Leave Maria out of this." "Or what?" Elliot smiled coldly. "You'll pray for me. I've got proof, Nathan. Receipts, transfer records, everything showing how you orchestrated this whole redemption narrative. One call to the press, and your little charity case becomes tomorrow's scandal." In the kitchen doorway, a pan clattered. Nathan turned to see Maria standing there, face pale. She'd heard everything. "Maria." Nathan started, but she held up a hand. "Is it true?" she asked softly. "Was this all planned?" "No," Nathan said firmly. "Elliot, leave. Now." "Think about it, old friend." Elliot stood, straightening his tie. "You have until tomorrow to transfer the money, or everyone learns what a fraud you really are." The door chimed again as he left. The elderly couple pretended to study their menus. In the sudden silence, the oldies station seemed too loud, too cheerful. Maria disappeared into the kitchen. Nathan followed, finding her gripping the edge of the steel prep table, knuckles white. "I can explain," he began. "Can you?" She turned, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Every time I start to trust you, Nathan, something like this happens. More secrets, more complications. It's not what you think." Nathan ran a hand through his hair. "Yes, I funded Grace's table, but not for publicity, for redemption. Real redemption. How can I believe that?" Maria's voice cracked. "How do I know this isn't just another rich man's game?" Nathan stood there, heart pounding. Then slowly he reached for his phone. "What are you doing?" Maria asked. "The only thing I can do." he replied, dialing a number. "Tell the truth." 3 hours later, Nathan sat across from Karen Chen, the city's most respected news anchor. Camera lights blazed in the diner's dining room. They'd closed early for the interview, but a crowd had gathered outside, pressing against the windows. "Mr. Cole," Karen began, "you requested this interview quite suddenly. Why now?" Nathan took a deep breath. "Because it's time for the whole truth. Not the sanitized version, not the PR version, the real story." He told everything. His childhood in foster homes, his desperate climb to wealth, meeting Maria when she was just a waitress with dreams of opening her own restaurant. "I was broken," he admitted, voice rough. "I thought success would fix me. When Maria got pregnant, I panicked. I'd spent my whole life running from poverty, from vulnerability. So I ran again, telling myself I was protecting her from my complicated life." Karen leaned forward. "And now? Now I know I was just protecting myself." Nathan's eyes filled. "I missed 5 years of my daughter's life because I was too proud to admit I was terrified. I bought buildings, but I never built a home. I made millions, but I was spiritually bankrupt. Your former partner, Elliot Vance, claims this transformation is orchestrated, a PR strategy to rebuild your image after the wedding scandal." Nathan nodded. "Elliot wants people to believe that because it's what he would do. He's threatening to expose that I funded Grace's table anonymously, as if that proves something sinister." He smiled slightly. "But I'm saying it myself right now. Yes, I bought this diner. Yes, I hired Maria to run it. Not for publicity, but because I finally understood what real success looks like." "And what does it look like?" "It looks like my daughter's smile when she helps clear tables after school. It looks like Maria's strength when she serves free meals to families who remind her of her own struggles. It looks like this community coming together, not because of my money, but because of God's grace." Karen studied him. "You mention God. That's new for you." "Everything's new for me," Nathan said quietly. "I wanted to build empires, but God wanted me to build a home. I fought that for so long. But sitting here, in this simple diner, serving others instead of being served, I've found more peace than I ever had in my penthouse." The interview continued, but Maria had seen enough. She switched off the small TV in Mrs. Cooper's living room, hands trembling. "Well?" Mrs. Cooper asked from her armchair. "What are you going to do?" Maria looked out the window. Rain had started falling, drumming against the glass. "I need to go to him," she said softly. "He's finally the man I always knew he could be." She grabbed her keys and jacket. The rain was coming down harder now, but she barely noticed as she drove through the dark streets toward Grace's table. Her mind filled with memories. Nathan washing dishes without complaint, reading stories to Lila, quietly helping customers who couldn't afford their meals. Lightning flashed, illuminating the diner's sign ahead. Through the windows, she could see the news crew packing up their equipment. Nathan stood alone by the counter, head bowed. Maria parked and sat for a moment, watching the rain stream down her windshield. She thought of what Nathan had said. God wanted me to build a home. Perhaps that's what they'd all been building here, one small act of grace at a time. She stepped out into the rain, ready at last to help him finish what they'd started. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Grace's table, casting warm rectangles across the freshly mopped floor. The breakfast rush had just ended, leaving behind the lingering scent of coffee and maple syrup. Nathan moved between tables with practiced ease, his sleeves rolled up, and a cleaning cloth in his hands. The transformation from corporate titan to humble server hadn't been easy, but there was peace in these simple moments. He hummed softly as he worked, the same lullaby he'd heard Lila sing that first day at the wedding. The tune had become a constant companion, reminding him of everything he'd almost lost and everything he'd finally found. The bell above the door chimed, and Nathan looked up to see Maria and Lila entering the diner. Lila wore her school backpack covered in colorful butterflies, her dark hair in 2 neat braids that Maria must have spent time perfecting this morning. "Daddy!" Lila's voice rang out with pure joy as she spotted Nathan. She broke free from Maria's hand and ran full speed toward him, her backpack bouncing with each step. Nathan barely had time to put down his cleaning supplies before Lila crashed into him, wrapping her small arms around his waist. The force of her embrace made him step back, laughing. "Careful there, sweetheart. You're getting stronger every day. I missed you," Lila declared, looking up at him with those familiar eyes that had first stopped his heart at the wedding. "Can I help clean, please?" "First, give your dad a chance to breathe," Maria said, walking over with a gentle smile. She looked different today, more relaxed, as if some heavy weight had finally lifted from her shoulders. Nathan handed Lila a small spray bottle filled with water and a clean cloth. "Here you go, my professional cleaner, just like we practiced. Spray twice, wipe in circles." Lila took her cleaning duties seriously, moving to a nearby table with intense concentration. Her tongue stuck out slightly as she worked, reminding Nathan so much of Maria when she was focused on a task. Maria watched their daughter for a moment before turning to Nathan. Her eyes held a new softness, different from the guarded look he'd grown used to seeing. "I saw the interview," she said quietly. "Several times, actually." Nathan's heart beat faster. "Maria, She held up her hand, stopping him. "Let me finish. What you said yesterday, about empires and homes, about surrender, I've been thinking about it all night." She took a deep breath. "I believe you now, not because of what you say, but because of what you've done." The words hung between them, precious and fragile. Nathan had to swallow hard before he could speak. "Thank you," he whispered, "for forgiving me, for giving me another chance with both of you." "It's not just forgiveness," Maria continued, watching Lila demonstrate her cleaning technique to an imaginary audience. "It's recognition. The man who left us would never have chosen this path. He wouldn't have understood the value of small moments, of honest work, of serving others." Nathan looked around the diner, at the worn booths he'd refused to replace because regulars loved them, at the community board filled with prayer requests and job postings, at the sign by the register that read, "Pay what you can." "I was so lost," he admitted, chasing everything that didn't matter, running from everything that did. But here, he gestured to the space around them. "Here, I found my way back to who I was always meant to be." Maria's hand found his, squeezing gently. "Then let's move forward together. Slowly, honestly." "I'd like that," Nathan said, his voice rough with emotion. Throughout the day they worked side by side, preparing for the evening's community dinner. Nathan fixed the temperamental coffee maker while Maria trained new volunteers. Layla bounced between them, proud to be their official taste tester for the night's menu. As evening approached, the diner transformed. Tables were pushed together to create long family-style seating. Mismatched chairs, donated by neighbors, created a warm, homey atmosphere. The smell of Maria's famous enchiladas filled the air, mixing with the aroma of fresh bread from the local bakery. People began arriving at 6 o'clock. Families from the shelter, elderly neighbors who lived alone, college students far from home. The diner buzzed with conversation and laughter. Children chased each other between tables while their parents shared stories and passed dishes. Lila appointed herself official greeter, proudly wearing her little helper apron. She led a group of first-time volunteers on a tour, stopping at the dessert counter where Nathan and Maria were arranging donated pies. "This is my mommy and daddy," she announced with beaming pride. "They built this place. Well, not the building, that was already here, but they made it special." The volunteers smiled at her enthusiasm, but Nathan and Maria exchanged a meaningful look. Their daughter had spoken a deeper truth than she knew. They had built this place, not with bricks and mortar, but with forgiveness and faith, with small acts of kindness and large leaps of trust. As the evening wound down, families lingered over coffee and dessert. Someone started singing an old hymn, and others joined in. The sound filled the diner with harmony, a spontaneous expression of gratitude and joy. Outside, the neon sign flickered to life as dusk settled over the street. Grace's table, a place for everyone, glowed in warm blue and white, a beacon in the growing darkness. Nathan and Maria stood beneath it, their hands naturally finding each other. The sign's light painted soft colors across their faces as they watched through the window. Inside, Lila was teaching Mrs. Cooper's granddaughter how to properly wipe tables, demonstrating the same circular motion Nathan had shown her that morning. The sight made them both smile. "You know," Maria said softly, "when you first came back I was so afraid. Afraid you'd hurt us again, afraid you'd change your mind, afraid it was all for show." Nathan squeezed her hand. "And now?" She turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the neon glow. "Now I'm not afraid anymore, because this—" She gestured to the diner full of life and love. "This isn't a show. This is real. This is home." Through the glass, they could see their daughter moving between tables, offering hugs and high fives to guests as they prepared to leave. She carried herself with the confident joy of a child who knew she was deeply loved, who had both her parents' hearts anchoring her world. The neon sign hummed softly above them, its message simple but profound. Grace's table had become more than just a name. It was a promise kept, a family restored, a community gathered. And beneath its gentle light, Nathan and Maria stood together, their joined hands a bridge between past and future, between broken and whole, between lost and found. Snow drifted lazily past the windows of Grace's table, coating the sidewalks in a pristine white blanket. Inside, warmth radiated from both the ovens and the hearts of those gathered. The scent of vanilla and cinnamon filled the air as Maria carefully decorated another batch of sugar cookies, her skilled hands adding delicate frosting details to each one. "Daddy, can I put the star on top?" Lila bounced excitedly beside Nathan, who stood steadying a modest pine tree in the corner of the diner. The tree wasn't as grand as the ones he used to display in his mansion, but somehow it felt more meaningful. "Of course, sweetheart." Nathan smiled, lifting her onto his shoulders. "Just be careful." I know," Lila giggled, stretching to place the golden star. "Mrs. Cooper says gentle hands make happy hearts." Maria glanced up from her cookie decorating, catching Nathan's eye. They shared a quiet smile, remembering how far they'd come since that tumultuous wedding day nearly 2 years ago. The diner had become more than just a restaurant. It was their sanctuary, their mission, their home away from home. Christmas lights twinkled along the walls, reflecting off the freshly cleaned windows. Regular customers and volunteers filtered in throughout the afternoon, each bringing an ornament to add to the tree. It had become their tradition, everyone contributing something small to create something beautiful together. "Look what I made in art class." Lila proudly displayed a paper angel, slightly crumpled but covered in enthusiastic glitter. "Can we hang it right here?" "It's perfect," Nathan said, helping her find just the right branch. He watched as she carefully adjusted it, her face scrunched in concentration. These simple moments still caught him off guard sometimes. How easily joy could be found in such ordinary things. Maria wiped her hands on her apron and joined them by the tree. The cookies need to set before we can serve them. How about we finish decorating while we wait? They worked together, untangling lights and hanging ornaments. Each decoration seemed to have a story. Handmade treasures from the local children's center, delicate glass balls donated by Mrs. Cooper, even a few weathered ornaments Maria had saved from her own childhood. Remember when we first reopened the diner? Maria asked softly, hanging a small silver bell. I was so afraid it wouldn't work. Nathan nodded, thinking back to those uncertain days. I was terrified too, not of failing financially, but of failing you and Lila again. But you didn't, Maria reminded him, touching his arm gently. You stayed, you learned, you changed. The afternoon light began to fade, and soon it was time to prepare for the evening's candlelight dinner. Regular customers arrived early to help set up, arranging tables and laying out place settings. The kitchen hummed with activity as volunteers prepared the feast: turkey, ham, vegetables, and dozens of side dishes brought by community members. Lila took her role as greeter very seriously, standing by the door in her Christmas dress and carefully decorated apron. Welcome to Grace's table, she announced to each arrival. Daddy says everyone's family tonight. As the diner filled with people, Nathan watched the scene with quiet amazement. Wealthy businessmen sat beside struggling single mothers. Elderly couples shared tables with young students far from home. The barriers that usually divided people seemed to dissolve in the warm glow of candlelight and shared meals. When everyone was seated, Nathan cleared his throat nervously. Public speaking had once been second nature to him, but this felt different, more real, more important. Before we begin, he said, his voice carrying across the hushed room, I want to thank you all for being here, not just tonight, but throughout the year. What we've built here is bigger than any one person. It's about community, about second chances, about grace. He paused, looking at the faces around him, faces that had become familiar and dear over the months. 2 years ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I had wealth, success, status. But I was missing what mattered most. Through your kindness, your forgiveness, and your willingness to be part of this journey, I've learned what true riches are. Maria stepped forward then, holding something behind her back. Speaking of what matters most, she said, we have something for you, Nathan. She handed him a wrapped package. Nathan carefully opened it to reveal a framed photograph, one taken earlier that day by Mrs. Cooper. In it, the three of them stood before the diner's counter, flour dusting their clothes from an impromptu cookie-making session. Lila's smile was radiant, caught mid-laugh. Maria's eyes sparkled with joy. And Nathan, he looked more at peace than he'd ever seen himself. Mommy says you're my daddy, Lila whispered, hugging his legs as he stared at the photo. Nathan knelt down to her level, tears pricking at his eyes. I know, sweetheart, and I thank God every day for that. He gathered her into his arms, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair, still amazed that he'd been given this precious second chance. The evening progressed with shared meals and quiet conversations. Candles flickered on every table, casting warm shadows on the walls. Outside, the snow continued to fall, but inside Grace's table, hearts were warm and full. As the last guests departed, leaving with containers of leftovers and promises to return, Nathan, Maria, and Lila prepared for their own journey home. They bundled up against the cold. Lila in her purple winter coat, Maria wrapped in the scarf Mrs. Cooper had knitted for her, Nathan pulling on the simple wool hat that had replaced his designer accessories. Together they stepped out into the snowy night. Their footprints left trails in the fresh snow as they walked, hands joined together. Behind them, the lights of Grace's table glowed steadily, a beacon of love, forgiveness, and second chances that had changed not just their lives, but countless others. The snow fell silently around them as they made their way home, their hearts full of gratitude for the simple miracle of being together, of having found their way back to what mattered most. The diner's light continued to shine through the falling snow, guiding others toward hope, just as it had guided them toward each other. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.